Welcome to Sit Down News. This week, I'm going to talk to you about a blog that I just did called The Lie That Could Have Caused the Tragedy. And I speak about the year 1989. And that year, Michael, my co-defendant, Michael Liguori, and myself were locked up in Queens House of Detention, which is located in Kew Gardens, Queens. And we had been to two previous bail hearings, both of which we were denied and remanded. And it was explained to us by our attorneys that we had one more chance at getting bail. And ultimately, our case went before Justice Philip Cheddar, and we were granted bail. We were both given $1 million bail. That was not obviously cash or money. There was some money involved, but it was mostly property. There was some businesses that were put up and things like that to get us out. Around the same time, Anthony Guzzo is put in Queens House as well for the shooting death of one guy, John Peters, and the attempted murder, he critically wounding Todd Kaufman. And I had spoken to Anthony, and he explained that this was over a pot deal and that he had to meet with these two guys, and he took his brother, Vito Guzzo, which is Anthony's half brother. And it was always believed that Vito did the shooting and Anthony took the pinch, as we say, and got arrested for this. Vito got away. And Anthony had the same judge, Judge Philip Cheddar, that he was also trying to get bail from. But before he was going for his bail, and a Daily News article came out titled "Bail Rouse Family of Slain Man," and that had to do with our case. And it basically put a little bit of pressure on the judge, this Judge Cheddar, for granting us bail in our case. And when Anthony went for bail in his case, Anthony was denied bail. Whether the political pressure from our case spilled over and that was the reason he was denied, I don't know, but Anthony believed that to be the case. And he befriended a Black inmate, or as they say, prisoner, because it's a city jail, by the name of Tyson. And I don't know Tyson's first name or last name. I know that Tyson looked exactly identical to the former boxer and champion Mike Tyson. And Anthony basically told Tyson that his brother Vito, a few days ago, smacked those two guys, John and Michael, meaning me and my co-defendant, and that he was supposed to get bail, and because of the publicity of our case, that's why he didn't get bail, and that's why allegedly his brother found us and smacked us. So what Anthony didn't know was that Tyson was very good friends with Mike Liguori. I remember first meeting Tyson when we were in Queens House of Detention. We had come from commissary, and they gave you these tall brown paper bags. And one of the last items that you would buy in this commissary was either cigarettes. And I smoked cigars. Surprisingly, the guard who did the ordering was a cigar smoker, and they had Macanudo cigars. So when I seen that, I was so excited. I bought a bunch of Macanudo cigars, and they were laying on top of my bag. And then you go from the commissary to like a hallway and you wait to go catch the elevator back downstairs. So there was a whole bunch of us. And this guy comes in, and I'm like, holy shit, this guy looks just like Mike Tyson. And what he started doing was he started pushing up on the other guys in there and just taking their cigarettes and taking honey buns and whatever he decided to help himself to. And nobody was saying nothing to him. And he walked over to me. I remember I put my foot up on the wall to get a jump on him if he was going to put his hand in my bag. And he said, "Oh, cigars," and I remember laughing because he pronounced them like that. And I said, "Yep." I says, "And put your hand in there." I says, "And you're definitely going to have to kill me because I'm going to try to kill you." And Tyson moved on to the next person and never, obviously, he didn't touch my cigars. And Michael worked with Tyson in the gym. And when I told Michael later on what had happened, the next day or so, when I went to the gym or wherever it is that we seen this Tyson, he said, "You had an issue. That's my man. And we talked a little. I wasn't crazy about Tyson. I didn't like what he was doing to other people, but he wasn't doing that to me. But I would hello and goodbye him. So Michael had a relationship with Tyson. Anthony didn't know that Tyson knew Michael. So when Tyson was released, not long after, Michael put him to work in a place called Z Place, which was Michael's father's, Ron, owned a used car lot, and he put Tyson to work. And when Tyson started working, he told Mike what Anthony had said about the brother allegedly smacking us. So Mike naturally told me, and I told Michael I wanted him to reach out to Vito. He knew Vito a little better than I did, and I said, "I want you to make an appointment for us to meet." And we set that appointment up at a nightclub in Canarsie, Brooklyn, called Le Parc, which was on Avenue M and Rockaway Parkway. I, at the time, was living on Avenue J in Remsen with my mother. We left Howard Beach and went there because it was closer to her job. I wasn't crazy about living in Brooklyn. I would always go back to Queens and stay with my friends. Le Parc was a well-known spot. A lot of wise guys hanging out in the spot, specifically the Lucchese family. Even Gas Pipe, Anthony Casso used to stay there with a lot of other members of that family. When we arrived, we got there a little early, look around. We parked. I turned to Michael. I told him, take the safety off of his gun. I did the same. We put bullets in the chambers, and I told him if Vito blinks wrong, we shoot him. And once again, just for the record, this is back in 1989, and I was totally living my life in a different way back then. The reason why I told Michael this was that Vito Guzzo was known to be trigger happy, and he had shot a bunch of people, and he was involved in a bunch of things which we knew about. He would later be convicted and took a plea and took 38 years for several murders. One being he was in a shooting that involved some Colombos, which I had wrote about in another blog, where he believed that these were the guys responsible for killing his father, who disappeared years ago. His father was a friend with the Colombos. He was a made member with them, and he disappeared and was never seen again. Anyway, when Michael and I went inside Le Parc, I quickly was looking around, and when I looked towards the door again, Vito entered. Michael was the first one to walk over to Vito and say hello. I went behind him. I shook my hand out. I said hello to him. I motioned for us to go down. It was a staircase that led to the bathrooms downstairs. I'd been in the place before, so I knew the layout. While Michael and Vito first went down, I was following them. Someone tapped me on the shoulder. When I turned around, it was Louis Dedone. And for those of you who don't know, Louis Dedone at that time was a member of the Lucchese family. He was a friend. He would later go on to be the consigliere of the family, and then took an acting boss position of that family. Louis said, "Hey kid, how's your mother, how's your mom?" And the reason he's asking about my mother, years ago when I was about 14 years old, my mother and I worked for a company outside the airport, and Louis had something, either a piece of it or had something to do with that company. So I told him that my mother was doing okay, and I told him I would say hello to him, say hello for him. And he motioned like with his chin towards the stairs downstairs. He said, "You okay?" And Louis was a sharp guy, and he was a wise guy in the life, and he knew the life, and he obviously sensed that something was going on. And I respected him for asking me that. And that's what he's supposed to do in that life as a friend. You look to help people, and he would have, if I wanted and told him that I had a problem, he would have went downstairs and tried to straighten that out with Vito for me. But I didn't want him to get, I didn't want to involve Louis. I said I was okay. And he said, "If you need me, I'm here." And Louis went about his way, and I went down the stairs to meet up with Vito and Michael. And I basically explained to Vito what we were doing there, and that, the message that we received from this guy that had a conversation with his brother, and that, what was said supposedly by his brother Anthony. And he listened, and he said, "Look, honestly, this is the first time I'm hearing about it, but I'll definitely speak to my brother. I don't understand why he would say something like that if he did say it." And I think Michael was in agreement with me that Vito kind of knows, obviously, his brother better than we do. And I think he knows his brother sometimes says things that are not true. He didn't lead on to that, but I think he knew. But out of brotherly loyalty, he threw the last part in. He says, "If my brother even said it," and I respect that. He was very respectful. We were respectful back with him. We made some small talk, and then we all headed back upstairs. And once upstairs, it was either Michael or myself that suggested that he have a drink with us. I don't think Vito was a big drinker, but he didn't want to stick around. He said he had another appointment to get to. We said goodbye to him. "Thank you for coming." And he went his way. Michael and myself went to the bar, and we ordered a drink, and we had to drink. I mentioned that I never went over to say goodbye to Louis. They don't. And it wasn't out of being disrespectful. It's just that I noticed that Louis was up sitting at one of the tables, and he was in deep conversation with a couple of guys. And I felt funny to walk over and interrupt him just to say goodbye. And after our drink, me and Michael left the park. I believe it was years later when I had an opportunity to have a conversation with Anthony about this whole thing. And I questioned him about it, and Anthony denied the whole thing, and he cursed the guy Tyson, called him an effing liar and whatnot. And I just dropped it. I speak about my friendship, that obviously, naturally, Anthony and I no longer have a friendship, but when back then, I feel that I always was loyal to Anthony. This was not the first time that Anthony has lied to me or put a lie in the mix and get caught, and just things like that, that just he really disappointed me as far as a friend would go. And, we were friends at one time, and obviously we're not. I just always felt that I was a friend to Anthony. Unfortunately for his brother Vito, Vito was offered, I think, 21 years on that case that he's in for now. And listening to lawyers and taking the advice of his attorney, he turned down the plea, and it went to 40. And he naturally changed lawyers, and he got this woman lawyer, and she begged the government, "Just give us something under 40." And they said 38, and he took the plea. He was a young guy that wasted his life, getting involved, as we all did. And he still remains in prison to this day. I don't know when he's getting out. And that's basically it. If you have not subscribed to Sit Down News, you could do down below. If you hit the notification bell, you could get notified when there's new videos. I hope everyone is enjoying their day. Let's hope for peace, and take care, and we'll talk again. Ciao.